These are some of the worst shooting mistakes you can make for beginners. Let's get started. The first, biggest, and mother of all shooting mistakes is getting out of your comfort zone too early. Whether that means getting out to the three-point line too soon, or getting from difficult moves into shots or into games way too soon. And the reason that's the mother of all mistakes is because when you start doing that, then all kinds of things can start getting messed up with your shot, such as your footwork. Maybe your positioning is gonna get really weird because you're doing a really difficult dribble move and you're trying to get your feet set as quick as you can to get into the shot, and now your feet are doing something they shouldn't be. You come way out here on the three-point line where maybe you're not comfortable yet because you're a beginner, and you start shooting with both hands or shooting like this or doing all kinds of weird stuff. But a lot of the mistakes we're gonna cover in the rest of this video can be eliminated, and you can get nice good form by not doing that, not getting out to the three-point line, not getting into games too soon, and not getting into complicated dribble moves and trying to get into your shot. What I recommend you do is get nice and close to a hoop and work on form shooting, making sure you have all the things that we're gonna talk about in this video a habit, as far as the guide hand, the shooting hand, all that. You can also do one hand form shooting with the hoop, and there's a bunch of other drills you can do to eliminate a lot of bad habits. I'll link you to a video at the end that'll really help you with that. But if you really want to take this next level, my cheat code shooting program that I'll pin to the comments will really help you with that. Also, the free shooting workout for you there. I'd recommend you get hundreds, if not thousands, of shots right next to the rim here, then eventually move out a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and then eventually you can work your way out here, and we can start talking about doing things off the dribble and footwork. What I recommend you start with for that is just simple 1-2 steps into your shot, going left and going right. So if the right hand is dribbling, left foot, then right foot, and left hand dribbling, you're gonna go right foot, then left foot, and then also work on hop, so both feet land at the same time. Those are gonna be the main footwork patterns you're gonna wanna start with, and just go nice and slow, getting into that shot. And when you're doing that, or any type of shot, you want to pay attention to your foot positionings, which is the next big mistake, is getting that foot positioning really weird and wonky and off. So I'm a lefty, so generally what most coaches will teach you is to have 10 toes to the rim. Basically that means my feet are pointing directly to the hoop and they're exactly even. So you can see if I come to the free throw line right here, they're going to be equally distant from the hoop and from the line. But what you'll find is a lot of the best shooters, they're gonna have their shooting side slightly forward. So I'm a lefty, that would mean bringing my left foot slightly forward, and also there's gonna be a slight tilt, so I'm not quite facing the hoop. What that's gonna do is bring my shooting side foot and hip forward and shoulder, which will help with a lot of the other things we're gonna talk about in a little bit. Versus if I have them square, it makes it kind of hard to get my hands in a good position, and that comes to a lot of the mistakes we'll get into in a little bit. But no matter what kind of footwork you're doing, 1-2 step, if you're right next to the hoop, just working on your form, whatever the case may be, try to get close to squared, maybe a slight turn with your feet, and maybe slightly bring that shooting foot forward. The mistake I would see with a lot of players is maybe turning too much, maybe having their, if they're a lefty, having the right foot more forward, and also not having a good base under them. So sometimes the feet might get too narrow, sometimes they get too wide. That kind of stuff is gonna happen in games, and especially as you get more advanced. But as a beginner, you wanna try to be a little bit more than shoulder width apart with those feet. Try not to be too narrow, not too staggered with your stance, not too wide. Next biggest mistake comes down to how you're positioning the basketball with your two hands. So you want to think about this as basically having the shooting hand doing the work, and the guide hand just helps bring the ball up. But within that, there's a lot of mistakes that can happen in little details. So first of all, we want to think about where the ball is positioned relative to our body. So again, I'm a lefty. I would want that ball, as I'm starting to get up in that shot, a little bit more towards that left hip here, right in front of that left hip. If you're righty, right hip. Definitely don't want to start with it on the opposite hip. Again, that's something as you get advanced, you can work on a separate, different kind of shot for game situations, where if maybe the defense is right here, you can get the arms over them. But as a beginner, don't even worry about that yet. You want to make sure you got this consistent here, so that way up here, this is where the consistency is extra important. And if you start here, this consistency is going to be that much better. If you start here, look what my hands do as I'm bringing the ball up. I can really mess my shot up as a beginner. So get it in front of that hip. Think about having the other hand towards the front of the ball. A lot of coaches will say to the side, but as you'll notice, as I bring the ball up, my hand is kind of positioned here. What that can create is now as I shoot, I start flicking with that thumb, which is another of the mistakes. Now there's some NBA players that have a thumb flick, and a lot of players will look at that as like, well, see, that's okay. The problem is it can lead to inconsistency. Sometimes you're flicking right as you're releasing, other times you're flicking a little later, and that's gonna affect which way the shot's gonna get pushed, because this thumb is gonna push it that way if it flicks right as you shoot. And so what a lot of players will develop is, because of that, they're gonna counteract that with this hand going this way, so both hands are kind of doing this to try to push it forward. But if the timing gets off between the two hands, it can mess things up. Another common mistake is having this shooting side elbow out too much. And as you can see, as I bring the ball up, that's gonna end up in a weird shot. Now, most players aren't gonna be that exaggerated. It's gonna be more kind of like this. But as you can see, still, as I bring it up, it can create a shot where my hand is like this. I want my hand under the ball when we get here. That's the biggest key, again, is this point here. I want my hand right directly under the middle of the basketball. So if I'm gonna shoot to this hoop, the middle of my fingers, either my pointer or my middle finger or right in between there, is in the middle towards that hoop. But if I start here or I start getting the ball here, all that kind of stuff can start messing up my elbow positioning, and now my hand, the midpoint is pointing over here, and now I'm flicking it kind of sideways. So I want to think about trying to keep that elbow somewhat tucked in. One thing that'll help with this is turning my feet a little, because sometimes what you'll see players is they'll do this and then they'll try to get that elbow in to get the hand right under, but look how my elbow is pretty much to my belly button now. Now we got another position that's kind of weird. Instead of my hand being on this side, now I got it all the way over here, and now this is another weird inconsistent form because it makes me want to push the ball that way. So by bringing that shooting side foot forward and turning my feet slightly, it makes it a little bit more comfortable for me to have my elbow in but not cram it in really weird or all the way across here, just kind of by my hip here, and I can get my hand right under the ball as I bring it up. Two other mistakes with the ball positioning come from this point and also as we get it to the set point, which is where we have it elevated here and we kind of have the 90-degree angle. So here we want to think about having the ball somewhat tight to our body. You don't have to cram it so the ball is touching your body, but comfortably. So you can see how my elbow is bent about a 90 degrees, my wrist is bent back. Some players you'll see have a hand a little bit more flat. I would say that's not maybe a mistake, but it's something you want to try to get rid of, having completely flat or down like this. You want that wrist bent back a little bit so that way you can get under the ball up at this point here. You start getting the ball behind the hip, then you're starting to do that push shot. Two hands are going to start getting involved a little bit more, and the form's just going to get weird because you're going to be shooting like this when you want your arm up like this, which is another little mistake that we're going to throw in as a bonus there. But some players you'll see they'll have the ball out here to start their shot. Now what this does is, see how I have no leverage into the shot and there's no force to be produced, right? So I have to bring the ball back here, and now I have to bring this extra big swooping motion to bring the ball back. A couple problems with that. If I got someone on defense, this is a really good opportunity for them to steal it because the ball is coming so close to them. Number two, this extra motion makes it harder to make my shot fluid, consistent, and get good power in because I'm creating energy this way, then this way, then this way, whereas I could just get nice and loaded here so I can make it nice and smooth all towards the basket, and everything's a little bit more consistent. Now you'll notice even here, the ball's gonna come away from my body slightly, but we wanna try to make that as slight as we can. If we try to go straight up, that's probably gonna feel a little unnatural, which would be another mistake, but just a very slight curve, that's about where we wanna be, get the hand under, and then everything can be nice and smooth with lots of good power. One other mistake you'll see some players do is bring that ball behind the shoulder. So sometimes they'll start it tight, but then they'll bring it back here. Some players are gonna start the shot by bringing it wide like we talked about before and then bringing it back. But at the end of the day, you want to think about keeping the basketball in front of the shoulder, not behind it or even with it, and try to make everything work towards the hoop. Because again, then you're bringing the ball back, the shot is slower, it's harder to get range, and you're gonna get more of a line drive shot versus here, you're gonna get better arc. And as you can see, arc is important because if the shot is flat, there's really no chance for it to go in. Even if it's a slightly higher arc, but it's somewhat flat, it's just a harder shot to make because you're basically turning the hoop from this into this. But if I can get that ball with a good arc over the top, it makes the rim bigger, better chance of making it, and you're gonna get a better bounce off the rim. Another couple mistakes would come at this point here. So first of all, again, those tips I gave you before about thinking about which fingers in the middle of the ball is important. So we wanna make sure either it's the ring finger or the pointer finger, but also we wanna think about releasing that's the last finger to touch the ball. If I start having the basketball come off my pinkies, you see how the basketball side spins. If it comes off my thumb, you can see how it's gonna side spin and it's gonna direct the basketball in all kinds of weird, unpredictable directions. You're not gonna have a consistent shot. But on top of that, we wanna think about having this guide hand here. As we mentioned before, we're gonna have it in the front to start. As we get it up to the top, think about having the guide hand on the top of the basketball. Now, a lot of coaches will say to have it on the side, but again, you can see here how that maybe puts me in a position where I might want to get that thumb flick in, but if I have my hand on top of the ball, it's really hard for me to flick with that thumb. So I'm gonna bring it up with the hand on the top of the basketball. I'm gonna drop that guide hand off, try to keep it facing sideways, and that way the shooting hand is doing the work, coming right down the middle of the ball. So the mistake would be having the other hand, the guide hand, too much to the side of the ball, both hands kind of in the middle, not having this hand under the middle of the ball, or doing some weird flick with this thumb, or having it come off with some of the other fingers. And right here's the video with different drills to help you master your form. Here's a video with more shooting basics in detail. And again, I got that full shooting workout and program into the comments, as well as a free shooting workout that'll help you. But within that free workout, keep in mind some of the things we talked about with trying to get shots in off the dribble and from too far away. You might want to adjust some of the drills accordingly. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.